Last week was episode 2 in our 8-part series covering Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash. This is episode 3. We're covering chapters 8, 9, and 10 in this episode. This is Conquering the Human Element. If you haven't already, we highly recommend you go pick up the book and read along. We're not covering every aspect of it here. We're just summarizing it. We're also giving our thoughts so that you can read it and get some additional information from a perspective of people that are practicing infinite banking today. And our perspective is actually quite a bit different than your certified Nelson Nash infinite banking practitioners. So we hope you find it helpful. This is the Life Insurance Financial Education Podcast, where we're pulling back the curtain on high cash value life insurance and how it can help you build wealth and achieve your financial goals. I'm your host, James Barber, your Oregon Cash Flow Pro.
And I'm Carlo Viqueira with Net Wealth Finance.
Before we get to chapter 8, we've got part 2. And part 2 ends up covering Parkinson's Law. What's Parkinson's Law, Carlo?
Parkinson's Law, it states that expenses will rise equal to income. And really what that means is you are going to have increases in your income over your lifetime. And with that, you're going to have increases in your spending. A lot of people might call this lifestyle creep and various other things like that. It happens to the best of us. When we make more money, naturally, somehow we find ways to spend that money. So battling that's that human element. You have to try to fight against that. And some people in this space will call it pay yourself first, whether that's putting money into your retirement accounts and just automating that process, or if it's life insurance, like a whole life product, you can put your money in there first, so that you are just taking that out of the equation to remove it from that lifestyle creep risk.
Yeah, and Parkinson's Law says that a luxury, once enjoyed, becomes a necessity. So that's that lifestyle creep that you're talking about. It recognizes that successfully building an infinite banking practice requires overcoming this Parkinson's Law all the time. And if you fail, you're basically going to be subject to wage slavery. That's the point of this introduction and the talking about Parkinson's Law. From there, we move into chapter 8, where it covers Willie Sutton's Law. Why don't you tell us what Willie Sutton's Law is?
Well, wherever the wealth is accumulated, somebody's going to try and steal it.
Yeah, Willie Sutton is a bank robber. And when asked, why do you rob banks? He said, that's where the money's at.
And that means that whenever you accumulate money, in the case of the IRS, I don't agree with all of this. This is a Nelson Nash position, but the IRS will come to steal it. So the way that you can try to prevent more of that money going away is to get more tax-free gains. And that's kind of what this strategy promotes, is paying your taxes on the front end before it goes into a life insurance policy, and then having the ability to access through policy loans tax-free.
Yeah, I think this chapter is basically, at the heart of it, is just saying, let's try not to give up money to the IRS that we don't have to. None of us are arguing for tax evasion, but there are legal ways that you can manage your money to try to avoid as much tax as possible. And that's generally by trying to do things that is supportive by the government. There are a lot of tax incentives out there, and you want to take advantage of those. One of those being high cash value life insurance, because it's going to grow tax deferred and you can access it tax free through policy loans and dividends up to your basis.
And another way, not necessarily in the life insurance space, is something like a Roth. And that's why sometimes you'll hear us make comparisons with an IUL and a Roth, some similarities, but same principles really apply there.
Yeah, and this book doesn't really mention Roths at all because it really wants to focus on, look, there's this tax trap out there. If you use these qualified accounts, you're going to be subject to the control of the government and the exceptions that they're going to provide. And it really, I think it does a good job of trying to instill fear in utilizing what are really popular ways for people to save up for retirement.
And we got to look at it through the lens of when this book was written as well. These products, some of these types of accounts were somewhat in their infancy in this phase of history where pensions are going away or starting to at that point. And the things like 401k are starting to really take hold. And I think Nelson Nash goes hard on them a little bit. We don't advocate to say don't do any of that. There's a lot of reasons to use retirement accounts, but it shouldn't be all of your eggs in one basket. And that's why we promote the idea of having these life insurance products as well.
Yeah, and this book is really focused on pushing hard on the idea that the government controls those accounts, and they can and have made changes to them in the past. So since those rules are subject to change, you need to be setting aside money where you have control. It's a private contract between you and the insurance company, something that predates income tax altogether. And hopefully you can avoid this type of manipulation in the future. That's the tax qualified trap that they finish up chapter 8 with. Chapter 9 goes into the golden rule.
And that is, those who have the gold make the rules. That is to say, you have money, you can control things, how you're going to access those funds, be the provider of capital, maybe become a hard money lender, whatever it is you want to do. Once you've built up your bank, your financing into one of these policies, you have that control, and you're not beholden to the banks that will control whether or not you can get approved for a loan or whatever it might be.
Yeah, the focus of this chapter is not the government now. It's everybody else that you have to borrow money from throughout your lifetime. They're going to make the rules when it comes to when you have to make the payments, what type of fees you're going to pay with it, how much interest you're going to pay. You don't get to control any of that. And if you mess up, they're coming after you, or they're coming after whatever you collateralize that loan with.
And that's where you're subject to. And if you're getting a loan from a bank, you'll have this process called underwriting for pretty much any loan or line of credit. That those are the rules that an institution, that there might be also federal regulations involved in some of those aspects, but there can be extra rules set by the institution. Whoever it is that you're borrowing those funds from, you're going to have terms and all that stuff. In life insurance, you have a contract that lays out those borrowing terms. And if you ask for the money or through a policy loan, you have a contractual obligation to be able to access it in that way.
Yeah, so the ability to overcome the golden rule is own the capital yourself. It gives you the freedom and the ability to negotiate favorable terms among whatever it is that you're trying to do. And maybe you can avoid other lenders entirely, but it really puts you in the position of power. And it's kind of the backbone of what makes the infinite banking concept so powerful and growing your wealth inside of one of these policies. This takes us to chapter 10, the arrival syndrome.
And that is the destructive belief that one already knows all there is to know, and that prevents continuous learning and proper classification of financial reality.
Yeah, what Nelson really wants you to get in this chapter is that as much as you think you already know, you don't know enough if you're not familiar with the infinite banking concept. So he's really coming at the idea that somebody's going to come into this thinking, I don't really need this. I'm already doing everything I need to do. You don't know anything else that I don't already know. And the belief that whole life insurance is garbage, right? It's expensive and nobody should be doing it, which is pretty pervasive out there. So the arrival syndrome says it's a destructive belief. Don't assume you already know it. And it gives examples of like where companies came in and did this, ignoring Japanese manufacturers and what they were able to bring in, and how it led to almost the destruction of manufacturing here in the U.S. in certain areas to these Japanese manufacturers, because we already thought we knew what we needed to know. Comes to find out, we didn't.
This is an area where I used to get into some debates on Threads or Twitter or Blue Sky with different people who are in this financial space, and so many people, they've heard the arguments of your big financial gurus that are out there, and they just kind of repeat some of that stuff without having actually had the experience of using these tools. And that's one thing that a lot of people fall victim to this. So don't fall victim to that. Look into this yourself. Try to understand the concepts. See some illustrations. Talk to people who may have policies. If If you want to hop on a meeting with me and see how my policies have performed, you can do that. I think James has videos where he occasionally updates things on his own policies. See how they actually work and understand how they work in practice, rather than somebody talking about somebody they knew, their uncle who had a failed policy 30 years ago, because it's not all the same. Not all of these things are created equal.
Sounds like a good call to action for this week. Get in touch with us, check out our policies, see what they're doing. Don't assume you already know. As Nelson says here in the Arrival Syndrome chapter, people that fail to take an in-depth look at what's truly happening in the financial world, you miss quite a bit. And the infinite banking concept is really, really powerful. Don't miss out on this. With that, we're going to be back next week with episode 4, Conquering the Human Element again, but this is about discipline and design. Be sure to join us for that. Appreciate you joining us for this one. I'm James Barber, your Oregon Cash Flow Pro, and I'm licensed for life insurance and annuities across the country.
And I'm Carlo Viqueira. You can find me at netwealthfinance.com or on YouTube at netwealthfinance. And we'll work with life insurance clients across the country as well.
Take care. See you next week.
Thanks for tuning in.
The next 20 seconds determine your future. Subscribe, meet with us, or continue educating yourself with these videos right over here.